Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to today's Shed Advisor webinar. I am Rebecca Bradley Ray, and I'm going to be your host. We're excited for you to be joining us today for our webinar about leading your family business from the inside out. Well, I will go ahead and introduce our host for today. Steve Byler is a certified speaker and coach with Maxwell Leadership and a certified EOS implementer who assists leaders and leadership teams in getting clear with their vision in order to get more of what they really want from the business. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Rebecca. Good to be with all you folks again today. And I'm especially delighted to welcome Sara to our live webinar. Sara is a fellow EOS implementer. Although well down the pathway from me, she is ranked as an expert, which means she's got over 500 sessions under her belt now. And I'm in the 150 range. So I'm coming along behind. But Sara, we're absolutely delighted to have you here. And just a brief intro to Sara, other than the fact that her name is a sentence, which you'll want to note, Sara B. Stern. And you'll also know that she is not necessarily stern, though she probably could get stern. And she says doesn't remotely get close to describing her typical way of walking through the world. And I would agree with that. Mm-hmm. She's an expert EOS implementer, trained in 2015. She's also a certified coach since 2001. She's completed a master's degree in organizational leadership, and she's the former director of a nationally recognized family business center. And most importantly, if you're invested in that way, Sara, you better be a huge fan of family businesses. So she was raised in family businesses, worked in family businesses, and is on a quest to help family businesses get the help they really need. She also works with family business advisors to help them serve family businesses more powerfully. And I would just note, I think almost all of my clients are family businesses. And so delighted to have you here today, Sara. And I'm not sure if you have an opening comment you want to make before we discuss the story about how we first met, which I think we have to do just because it's so crazy. So
we have to do that. Let's start there.
Welcome, Sara.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you to Rebecca for having me.
Okay, appreciate you taking the time to be with us. And I'll just have to say, this was February of 2023. I had just completed my boot camp with EOS and walked into this huge gathering of 700 EOS implementers from around the world, standing in a small circle of people, kind of introducing ourselves. And I say, I'm Steve Byler, new implementer alert, which is kind of the internal language. And Sara just looks at me and says, room 613. Okay, be honest, I was absolutely stunned. This is a huge hotel. And here was a complete stranger who knew my hotel room number. It freaked me out. Okay, so what really happened, Sara?
This is so wild. This is so funny to me. I checked into my room, which I think was room 513 or maybe 713.
That's correct.
Yeah, I think it was 513. And there's this beautiful spread. If I'm remembering right, there were chocolate covered almonds, and I think there's a cookie, and there's a handwritten note and maybe some wine. It's just this beautiful. I thought, wow, why am I getting this great treatment? And then I looked, and the note was written to Steve Byler. And I called and said, I'm not Steve. I don't know why I have Steve's stuff here. And they said, well, it's yours now, or something like that. And then I got the chance in this giant crowd of 700 people, many of whom I had not met, some of whom were there for the first time ever. And there's the Steve Byler, whose treats I got to enjoy.
Yeah, so all that to say, I did get the card. I didn't get all the goodies. Okay, the goodies were gone by the time we met. And the chance that she would actually find this person, was a bit of an anomaly. So there we were early in the day.
Great.
But I've enjoyed your contribution to the EOS world, and especially around family businesses. And I sat in one of the workshops you did at one of our events. So I'm curious, you chose this title now about family businesses, changing them from the inside out. What's that all about? What do you mean by changing your business from the inside out?
Yeah, this is something after so many years of working in family businesses and for family businesses and serving family businesses. Over the last couple of years, I have realized a lot of people, whatever generation they're in, whether they currently own the family business or they're a next generation, are feeling like things are happening, like they are at the whim of external things in their family business. And what I've come to see is when people really focus internally and realize they have agency in their family business, that when they get clear on what they want in their family business, when they change internally, everything around them changes. And it has occurred to me and become even more obvious to me of late when it just feels like time is going 10 times faster than it used to go.
Yeah.
But it's when you get your internal ways of thinking, ways of acting, when you get clear on your internal needs and wants and desires, that is when things change in the family business.
Okay, and I think that's a powerful insight, and this is true for many entrepreneurs, family businesses or not. Um, they get to a stage in their entrepreneurial journey where they feel like the business and the quote economy
Yeah.
or the marketplace is dictating the entire business to them. And of course, Henry Cloud is probably the guy who's best known for saying, "Wait, you have to take ownership. You have to be ridiculously in charge." I think is his
I
language,
love that.
and the really the ability to determine what are the things that are inside my sphere of control and what are inside my circle of responsibility, and to actively engage with decision making around those things really does transform a business life.
It
So
changes everything. Yes.
yeah, it really does. So how do you think family businesses are unique? What are some of the unique dynamics that come to family businesses?
There's the really typical things that you see on reality TV. I mean, family business is, if you look at reality TV and even scripted television, family business is all over the place because it's easy to make it look dramatic and dysfunctional and yucky. So there are those dynamics that find family businesses. But the dynamics that I wish were more out front that happen in family businesses is there's a deep level of commitment to the business. There's a deep love for each other. There's a deep level of commitment to their clients, their customers, and their employees and their vendors. A lot of family businesses, when the economy gets tough, will choose to make decisions that look like bad decisions externally, things like refusing to lay people off. Maybe they'll, move people to 3 days a week or 4 days a week instead of laying people off. They do things like that are, and I'm going to use air quotes here, bad business, but
Yeah.
really come from a place of, what I would say, good business, thinking long term, thinking 100 years out instead of thinking to the next quarter or the next year or the next 5 or 10 years.
So the power of relationships just matters more.
It
And
does.
I'm sure we'll talk about this a couple of times in our time together today, but the kind of the three circle model, coming out of Davis and Zaguri, I think back in 1978. Um, there's family relationships are kind of inescapable relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do whatever you want. You can isolate, your brother, your sister, your grandma, your dad, your mom, but they're still your family. It's inescapable, and they bring some of those qualities into the business world, I think. And often, so it can be unhealthy, and
Mhm.
maybe we'll talk about where some of that lack of health shows up. But you're pointing out a really healthy component of this is that the term people first often is a trait of family
Mhm.
businesses because our connections matter as family, and we have a bit more of a family attitude in who we're hiring, how we see our colleagues in business.
Yes, that's so well put. And that people first or even family first mindset can be wildly destructive and really hurt humans, individuals, as well as the business. And when when used thoughtfully, can be extremely helpful for the family, for the business, for the owners, and for the employees and the vendors and the customers. And that's the key thing: is how to use that mindset in a way that is healthy and productive instead of unhealthy and destructive.
So what are some good illustrations you've seen of that? You mentioned,
Yeah.
maybe trimming down hours versus just laying people off.
Yeah.
Other kind of illustrations or
Yeah.
stories that you think those values come to play?
Yeah, let's talk a little more about the three-circle model. This came from two wise people who were working at Harvard. Thank you for sharing that. Here's how I was going to present it. The way you're doing it is so much better than this. So
Well,
that's
so this was a last minute idea. So I quickly just did a
genius.
quick
I
circle and threw
absolutely
it
love
up
it.
there.
Oh my gosh. So I could talk about this for 17 hours. Instead, I'll try to do closer to 17 seconds. It'll be more
And
than
and
that. But
just
yeah,
a
go ahead.
clarifying note here. There are people here who are audio only, they're call in. So maybe
Oh,
we'll
good.
do a little bit of description, give them some
Perfect.
visuals for their.
I love it. Yeah, I'll describe this for those who can't see it. Imagine a three-circle Venn diagram. So three circles that overlap in the middle, but don't completely overlap. One of those circles is the family. And I should back up and say the official long name for this is the three-circle model of the family business system. And it's talking about these three systems that are at play in a family business. So one circle is the family. The second one is the business. And then the third one, and it's important, it's the top one, is ownership. So in a family business, what can sometimes actually, or I should say accidentally happen, is family businesses will put all three of those circles on top of each other. And then they will try to make decisions in the business, well, but then also trying to keep the family happy and the owners happy all at the same time. And the key to having this be healthy is when you're in the business, make good decisions for the business. When you're in the family, make good decisions for the family. And when you're thinking about ownership, make good decisions for ownership. So that's some theory there. Let's talk specifics. In the family, you cannot, or in the healthiest families, you can't fire your dad, your uncle, your brother from being your dad, your uncle, your brother. They are, you have those relationships. There are families who try to fire each other by, not talking to each other and whatnot. That is not healthy. So you don't get rid of a family member in the family circle. In the business circle, the healthiest way to think about this is in EOS, we talk about right person, right seat. So get really clear on what are the jobs that are needed in this business for the business to be successful. And then make sure the people in the job really align with the culture that you want for the business. And then they get the job. They want the job and they have the capacity. So instead of saying, oh, we have 7 family members, well, we better make up 7 jobs. We don't do that. We say, what are the jobs needed in the business? And then we hire the right person. And we play a game, at least I do this with my clients, pretend you aren't family members. Who are the right people for the job? And that takes you to the ownership thinking. In a family business, the healthiest way to think is we own this asset. And I like to say to my clients, pretend you are not allowed to work in the business. Pretend you cannot work there. You're only an owner. Who are the right people to be there? What should those people be doing? And I say that.
That's a very helpful.
Thank you.
That's a very helpful line right there. You're an owner. Pretend you're not allowed to actually be employed in the business.
Yeah. You cannot work there. Or, I mean, sometimes I'll say, pretend you're the owner of a piece of art or a herd of cattle. Like you can't be a cow. You cannot be the art. You can only be the owner of it. How would you treat it? How would you think about it? What is your approach to it? And that helps it be a little easier to say something like, okay, my uncle should not be running the business. When he used to run it, we had 5 employees. Now we have 500. Unfortunately, he's not a great leader of 500 people. He was great at 5. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because as owners, sometimes you have to make those tough calls. It doesn't mean this person's not your uncle, though. It also doesn't mean you're not having hard conversations. In order to change that thinking, I see this every day. I'm sure you do too, Steve. It's not like these conversations are easy to have.
No.
But I'd like to remind people not having that conversation isn't easy either. It's really hard to not deal with it. It's often harder to not deal with it than it is to deal with it.
And I've seen that play out when they're not having the conversations. It's the emotions build up, And then those emotions show up at Thanksgiving dinner, at Christmas dinner, at birthday parties. And often it's the related parties, not the immediate family members, but their spouses or children who get the backwash from those tense relationships. And it makes what should be, one of the most joyful places for a family to gather in celebration around holidays. It makes them tense, almost unbearable places. And that's a
Yeah.
tragic loss just because of a business.
It's so true. And I like to remind people that, people will say to me, well, I can't tell my son, my uncle, my dad, my aunt, whatever, that they're not doing a good job in the business. Cause what will it do to the family reunion? The first question is, what is it currently doing to the family reunion? Cause it is
Right.
already hurting
Right.
it. You're just accustomed to that pain. You're
Right.
trading the current pain for new pain. I've heard sometimes if you break your nose, if it doesn't heal right, they have to break it again. Thank goodness I have not experienced that. The current
Yeah.
pain is the thing you're used to. It can be helpful to break it so that it can go back to a situation that is actually healthier, where people can literally breathe better than they are
Yeah.
currently
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. So with this three circle model, there really are a total of 7 possible scenarios.
Yes, there's
I think it's a typical three circle Venn diagram. So you want to just walk us through those just briefly, at least?
Yes. So, yeah, there's 7 different places you might be in that model, meaning if you're a family member who's not an owner of the business and you don't work there, which, like you already mentioned, Steve, the folks who are married to the people who work in the business or the children are often in that part of the Venn diagram. They're a family
Yeah.
member, they don't work in the business, and they're not an owner. That's a tricky spot to be in. Also, sometimes people will own the business and work in the business, and then they sell it and they don't work there anymore. And now they're in that family spot, but they're
Right.
not accustomed to being there. That can be so tricky. There's also another spot where you're in the family and you work in the business, but you're not an owner. This is often in a lot of family businesses. The stories I've heard is the next generation is, and I'm using air quotes here, is working in the family business when they're 4 or 5 years old. My parents
Yeah.
owned a repair shop. When I was in elementary school, it was my job to clean the bathroom. I was working there. I didn't
Yeah.
get paid, but I was
Yeah.
working there. So
Oh, and I worked in our family business from the time I was 5 years old. It's what you do. It's
it's what you
life.
do. It's how it
Yeah.
is. I mean, that's how your parents make sure you're safe, is you're at work
Yeah.
with them, right? So,
That's
or
right.
maybe you're not safe, but at least they've got their eyes on you. Yeah. Then there's the people who work in the business. They're not a family member and they're not an owner. And in most family businesses, that's the majority of the people. They're the employees that are not owners. They're not family members. They're there. They want a job. They want it to be a healthy place to work. They want to get a paycheck. They want to get raises. They want to be taken care of. That top circle there, the owners, there are some people in family businesses who are owners, but they don't work in the business and they're not a family member. That one is very unusual. Very,
And
very.
I think there should be more than there are.
I agree.
Yeah, because there are many family business owners who, if they hired the right person to replace themselves, would generate so much more value from their businesses because
So much.
they're the lid on their organization.
Yes.
But in fact, they and here's one of the challenges. Many entrepreneurs do have kind of an aspect of an ownership mentality, but it starts out that I'm a technician first. I do my
Yes.
thing. And so I started a business doing my own thing for myself instead of for an employer. But they haven't transitioned to knowing how to run a company.
Yes.
And that's a
Yes.
painful journey. So it's okay to be a business owner and be the best technician demanding the highest return and being paid like a high paid technician, having somebody else run your business, and
Yes.
then take additional draws as owner equity if you want to. Your
Oh
business
my
can
gosh.
flourish. You build generational wealth those ways when you know your limitations and move, fluidly. And in EOS, we say this all the time. What's the best interest of the company, right? It's business first. And then when you get in the family, we need to know what's in the family's best interest. We get into ownership, what's in the ownership best interest. We have to ask those questions separately. And
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
just going to jump at one of my little tangents here. Um, Understanding these three circles means we shouldn't be talking business in most Thanksgiving dinner tables, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or
Oh my
even
gosh.
even at dinner at night. We should not be
Yes.
talking business. We need to be talking family. Okay. We need to be family when we're together around the dinner table. Okay. And I grew up with this as because literally we'd be at dinner, the phone rang, the house phone was the business phone. And so, we were selling products over dinner. We were booking appointments. We were taking inquiries, breakfast, lunch, dinner. They were so interwoven that it was a kind of a painful extraction process at a later date to get this sorted out.
Oh my gosh, I love that example. I want to say I want to say two things. One is that I'm an owner, but also the technician. I let somebody else run it. That person is technically right in the middle of this model. They're a
That's
family
correct.
member. They're an owner. They work in the business, but it's that mindset of saying, just because I'm the owner doesn't mean I have to run it every day.
That's right.
That's that mindset that I'm talking about. That changing from the inside. Just because you're an owner doesn't mean you need to lead it. Doesn't mean you're good at
Right.
it. Doesn't mean you want to
Right.
be in the seat you're great at. The other thing I want to say is looking at this model, I like to encourage people to think of that as three tables. And you want to sit around a family table on a regular basis and be family. You want to tell those stories of the family. You want to have your family conflicts. You want to have your family laughs. You want to build your family traditions. Then the business table, I think of as the conference room table. You need to sit down and have those meetings that are about the day to day of the business. And a great ownership team is going to make sure the people sitting around that conference room table, like you said, Steve, are the people who are uniquely skilled at running the business. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter if they're owners, doesn't matter if they're family. It's just people who are great at running a business. And then the often overlooked circle or table, I like to call it the boardroom table for the ownership, is what do
Yeah.
we want from this business? What kind of return are we looking for? What kind of money are we willing to put into it? Should we still own it? I mean, maybe you just want to sell it and stop dealing with it and instead deal with the, and I'm going to say air quotes, the big problem of a pile of money. Oh no, who could handle that, right? So that's the conversation around that boardroom table is what are we going to do with it? Or should we own the building? Should we sell the building? Should we grow the business? Are we happy with it the way it is? That kind of thinking of these are three separate tables to sit around and really focus on will make a massive difference in a family business life. And separating the phone line will do a hell of a lot of good too for them.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Where we actually have business hours.
Oh, nice. Those are good. Those are beautiful things. Yeah.
Yeah. So the other piece, and I'm just curious how you would respond to this, because I encounter this occasionally, that one of the kind of we call part of our core focus in EOS, kind of our core passion is actually somebody founds a business to provide opportunities for their family. So this is actually now a little bit of a different focal point for family businesses. Just
Mhm.
curious, do you run into that? And so they're actually wanting to create jobs for their family. Um, how does that play out, and what are some of the unique challenges with that approach?
Do we have 3 days to talk about this one, Steve?
No. Actually, I have to get on an airplane to go help a family business here right at the
Okay.
end of our time.
Um, I see that a lot. I see that a lot. And I absolutely think it is possible to have that be something that's important to you. I would say, though, that is not really, well, in my opinion, that is not the core focus of the business. That is the focus or the goal of owners. We want to own this business to give great opportunities to our family. When that's an ownership goal, that broadens the opportunity to create opportunities for your family. And this is what I mean. If you put that inside of the business, what you've now done to the business is said, let me think of a metaphor. We have a business. It's a racehorse, but we're going to feed it really bad food, and we're going to tie its legs together and then say, "Go win." That's not possible. That's just not possible. So why do that to your business? Because now what you've done is said to your family, "Congratulations, you can work in a business that's going to have a hard time having success. I don't know why you would do that. Or you're saying like, here, we're going to guarantee you a spot on a team that loses every game. Like, oh, what a dreadful thing to do to your family. Instead, though, you can say, we own this business to give opportunity to our family. And what that might look like is a job in the business. It might look like an opportunity to be an owner and enjoy hopefully monthly or quarterly or annual distributions. It might look like the chance to own a building, which might look like taking care of the building, for example. It might look like, I'm just giving you examples of some family businesses, what they've done. They take the proceeds or part of the proceeds from the business, and they've created a fund that family members can apply to get money from that fund to go start their own business, to go to medical school, to buy a race car and see if they can make money on it, to buy a racehorse, to buy art, whatever, so that people are still getting opportunities because the business exists, but it's not a guaranteed job in the business.
Okay. I love that distinction. Move that there really is an ownership focus.
Yep.
It's not a business or operational focus. So if we had to, let's just take those two components here, ownership and business. What are the primary questions that need to be addressed in those separate circles?
Yeah. In the ownership circle, what to me is important is there's 6 questions. I put up 5 fingers. There are 6 questions that I think are really important in the ownership circle. The first one is, what are our guiding principles? What guides our decision making? The second question is, what is our legacy? And the legacy is made up of 2 things. The first one is, why do we own the business? Which I bet you see this, Steve, all the time. 2nd, 3rd, 4th generation family business owners tend to have a hard time answering that question.
Yeah.
They own the business. The only answer they can give me is because, it's not really like an answer that connects to their heart and their soul. So why do we own it? And the second part of the legacy is, what are we trying to create that will exist in 100 years? So what is the tree we're planting today under which, we will never sit under the shade of that tree? The third question is, what do we want ownership to look like 10 years from now? So do the people who currently own it still own it, or is another group of people going to be owners at that point? The fourth question is, what is our philosophy around ownership? And that includes things like, what are the requirements to work here? What are the requirements to be an owner? What do we want from the business? And what are we willing to put into the business? And then how do we make decisions if we're at an impasse? That's the ownership philosophy piece.
Yeah.
Next question is, what's our plan? So if we want to, if we're trying to create all that, where do we need to be in 3 years? Where do we need to be in a year? What about 90 days from now? What about a week from now? And then the 6th question is, what will get in the way of this? And then the flip side of that, what's going to help it? That's the ownership circle. Those are the big questions in my book. In that business circle, it's the questions, Steve, you get to ask every day, and so do I, that are on the VTO. What are our core values, our core focus, our 10-year target, marketing strategy, 3-year, 1 year, 90 days, and issues. Those are the big questions for that day-to-day.
Yeah. So as you're unpacking kind of this ownership seat, I'm assuming these 6 questions are in your book.
They are, yes. Start here.
So just to note, and I think you can go to sarabstern.com and you can order the book directly off your website.
Correct.
And I assume it's also available on Amazon.
It is. Yep.
Remind me of the title of the book.
Yeah, it's Start Here, A Guide for Family Business Succession. And I really wrote that book to be a place to start for succession. It turns out people are not using it only for succession. They're just using it for the day-to-day being owners.
Right. Well, and isn't it true, Sara, that the reason that's the case is because if you run a great business, you can have a succession plan. If you run a lousy business, you'll never have a succession plan.
Absolutely.
One of the things in my coaching outside of EOS, before EOS, I would always emphasize is who are you building this business for? Who is the buyer of this business? Okay, get crystal clear about who your buyer is, whether it's internal, whether it's an ESOP, family members, private equity, a competitor. Know what your buyer is and
Yes.
optimize your business for your target exit. And you may never need to exit them because it runs so well. You actually have options. Okay, it doesn't mean you have to exit. It means you actually have options. And I'm counting too many business owners who are trapped in businesses that are underperforming and they want to sell. Well, that's a horrible time to sell.
Yeah.
Actually horrible time to sell. And it's almost impossible to sell. And again, a friend, tells me that he's a business broker, that 80% of businesses that get listed for sale never sell.
I didn't know the number
They
was that high. Oh my goodness.
they just close the doors and liquidate because there's no saleable business behind that desire to sell. It's not an entity in of itself that can be sold. It's somebody's job. And we don't go out around buying people's jobs, right? You just get a job. You take a job. If you're good, if you're better at it, you just take the job. And that's what happens in the world of business. So getting crystal clear on those questions. So I do commend, I'm not sure that I've actually read your book, Sarah, but I've heard you talk and I kind of have a sense of what's in the book, right? So,
well,
but I would recommend it.
The best thing about my book, in my opinion, is it's 62 pages long and it's mostly white space. It's a workbook. It's a book. What we've talked about today is already probably 25% of the content there. It's really meant to help you think through the answer to those 6 questions. I met with a guy on Friday afternoon, and about 45 minutes into the meeting, I handed him the book and I said, I think you can just read this book. Here it is for free. I don't think you need to hire me to help you with this. Because it's one guy, really thoughtful guy, like just answer the questions to this. And you're going to be 80% of the way there.
So one of the things I want to just move this into, and this is probably not, a first generation business question, but now second, third. And I see just growing complexities. If people don't get this right in the first generation, now you have 2 brothers, for example, or a brother and a sister owning a business, and both of them have children now of workforce age, and they want to be in the business. And then they need to pick a new CEO. And now there are 6 cousins in the business all vying for the CEO seat. How do we prepare the coming generations for a healthy transition in business leadership that doesn't blow the family Thanksgiving dinner apart?
Oh my gosh. That is such a thoughtful and important question. The first thing I would say is well, I want to say this. It's a little bit of a tangent, but I'll come back. There's this sad thing they say in family business, like the 3rd generation is the one who kills the business all the time.
Right.
And it's so sad. And my opinion about that is it's really the 1st generation that kills the family business. By setting inappropriate expectations. The 1st generation will say, I have 2 kids and they're going to run it. And that's how it's going to go. Yeah. And then those 2 kids. That's
almost always the death knell of the business.
Yes. And then those 2 kids try their best to run it. And then the business is barely going. And now we've got 6 cousins who think they're allowed and expected to run it. And it's not doing well. I mean, it's like a hockey team that in the first I was going to say quarter, in the first period is behind. And then they hand it off to a new coach in the second one who's even less qualified and half the team is injured. Now we get to the 3rd period and it's a train wreck, but let's blame it on that 3rd coach. I mean, it's terrible. Right. So anyway, the way to prevent that is whether you're 1st generation listening and thinking about this or 2nd or 3rd or 5th is to just commit to, I know it's hard to do, but running a professionally run business and doing, Steve, what you were talking about, thinking like owners, which might mean that you fire yourself from the business. Yeah. Or it might mean that you're currently running the place and you step back and say, wow, what I would be best at in this company is being a project manager. I need to hire a whole bunch of people to be my boss and my boss's boss in this business. That is the number one thing. And that's that inside out, like reality check. It doesn't matter what your last name is. You do not have to run it. And I feel my heart hurts for a lot of second, third, fourth generation people who think they have to run it. And so
Right.
doing their best and they're trying so hard, and inside they know they're not qualified, but they think they have to do it. So that's the thing, is have the best possible people run the business and swallow that bitter pill, or take the relief of recognizing I don't have to do this anymore.
Yeah. And I would note it's far more difficult to make that transition second generation, third generation, just as you gave the illustration. But it can actually be done at any point in time if people are just courageous enough to lean into it. So I have a friend who is the CEO of a fifth generation family business.
Wow.
And the fifth generation family business has over 500 employees now. And what the fifth generation had to do was get owners together and put in a systematic plan to buy out the ownership stakes of a broad range of family that was not interested, not involved, not even carrying ownership weight. And so it ended up being two owners over the period of about 10 years, purchased all the shares of the business, hired my friend as CEO. And these two now owners report to the CEO and run different aspects of the company. And he said they are the best people on the leadership team he has. But they're owners, but they've known they weren't the right people to actually run this company. And so they hired a true professional, and this professional carries the values of these owners. They're one of the most generous businesses in this entire community. And the philanthropic, ventures that they invest in reflect the owners' values. And those owners are able to invest, honestly, millions and millions more than they ever could have were they running the business themselves in these things that they care about in the community, because this guy knows how to run a company and he runs a great company.
Gosh.
So, I mean, this stuff can happen, right? It can happen.
That makes me so happy. I hope people rewind and listen to that story over and over again. That can happen. And think of the opportunities in that family to potentially, who knows, they could start foundations, they could start nonprofits, they could do all these cool things that could employ the heck out of their family members in a place where the family members are really actually skilled and passionate.
Right.
Love it.
So maybe the related question here is, and I think Davis and Tagari, I terrible with my Japanese names. It's Tagari, I think.
That sounds
Davis and
right.
Tagari did a later article in which they added a fourth circle. Are you familiar with that?
No, tell me.
Okay. And I say it was them. It might have been, it's in Harvard, but they add a quote board of directors. And so a fiduciary board of professionals. And they note that at some businesses reach the stage where the most critical decision is the selection of a new CEO. And it objectifies the process by taking it away from a group of family owners. So we don't have three brothers now deciding which of their sons or daughters is going to be the next CEO. We have a fiduciary board who probably is a professionally paid board. But they have fiduciary responsibilities, and they will hire the next CEO. And it takes the family out of a really volatile, what becomes subjective decision-making process, as opposed to being a bit more objective.
I love that. I have not seen that. I mean, I've seen different people add a fourth or a fifth or a sixth circle, and I'm always like, don't overcomplicate it. But I've often seen that board put in the part of the three circle model between the ownership and the business where that overlap is this, objective team of people who are listening to the needs of the family. What does the family want? The needs of ownership and the reality of the business, and then choosing who is this ideal integrator or CEO as often as that is needed, which is hopefully not very often. Hopefully 8, 10, 20 years is when that decision happens. As well as doing things in some cases like approving a budget or, capital expenses and whatnot. I think that's so wise.
And I think it also brings potentially, get your board right. It brings some kind of global perspectives, depends on the size of the business,
Yeah.
areas of expertise where they can ask, owners and executive team, have you considered a tweak in your strategy? Have you considered
Yes.
something you're facing? And these are, again, probably most of us don't have businesses at this scale, but and in some sense, Ford is still a family business, right? I mean, I don't know that they quite control it, but boy, pretty close to it with the family
Yep.
stake.
Yeah.
And so large businesses can be family businesses, largely controlled by families. And so you want to be sure that you set these up for success when you're starting out and embrace best practices. So we talked about this just briefly, but when should somebody start planning for succession?
Yeah. I have an annoying answer. 10 years ago is the real answer. If that doesn't work, today is the second best day and tomorrow is the third best day. So, and I say 10 years ago, but that's maybe even a short timeline. The reason I say that is the point you made, is thinking about this from the first generation is key, meaning even if you're not even thinking, oh, this will be a family business, really thinking about, what am I building this for? Am I building it to sell it? Am I building it to give it to my kids, my cousin, sell it to my employees, et cetera? So that was the real time to do it. There's a great exercise people who are listening can do, and do it in 3 minutes. And it's write down your name and your age, your key leader's name and age, your kids' names and ages, if there's grandkids around, nieces, nephews, etc., and then add 10 years to all of those people, and then add 10 years again, and add 10 years again. It is freaky how quickly that 4-year-old becomes 34 and wants to work in the business and might have some qualifications at that point to even be a leader in the business. That exercise can be really stunning for people and kind of put a fire under them, like, okay, I really do need to start thinking about this. Of course, current owners are never going to age or die. I know that is true. I know that's a fact. But everybody else in the family is going to age and is going to want to participate in a productive way in the business. And even if, let's pretend, if you're a first generation owner and your third generation is all under the age of 10, you can start succession planning with them, meaning talking about, what is the business about? Why do we own it? What are the values of the business? Getting them walking around in the business, seeing what it's like there, the feeling of it, getting them to do those free or unpaid, unskilled jobs, dusting things, cleaning bathrooms, right? That work is so much bigger than getting documents filled out and signed, financial and legal documents. It's so much bigger than that's the end game of succession. The beginning game is having people really understand what the business is about, learning ownership skills, leadership skills, and then of course, some practical skills too. How do you manage a project? How do you sell something? How does finance work? All that good stuff.
Yeah. So any good family business stories you'd like to tell?
Oh my gosh. There's so many good ones. There's so many nightmares too, but
Give us one of each. Give us one of each.
Okay, here's a sad one that came from my early days of running the Family Business Center. I was asked to I love to, when a family would join the Family Business Center, I'd go out and see their business. People love their businesses. And I thought it was fascinating to see. Some wise person said to me once, there's 1 million ways to make $1 million. And I see there's 3 trillion ways to make $3 trillion. I mean, it's incredible. So I went out to this family business and was just getting to know them. And they reported to me that 3 of the brothers had been in a fist fight. And I was stunned. And then it really was, they were in a fist fight again, meaning it was like the third time that
this was the normal thing.
It was normal. And gosh, how might you help me? How could you help me? At the time, I was not as prepared as I would be today for that kind of a question, but I did dig in and say, well, we've got to change a a couple of things around here. So that was really, really sad. And the business was actually doing quite well. But all I could think was to imagine how great it would be doing if there were not fist fights,
Right, right.
in the office on a regular basis. So luckily that business was able to sell after a couple of years. Everybody in the family did pretty well financially. And I don't know if I should go see if that business is still around. But so in a way that ended up being sort of a happy story in the end, but boy, it was horrifying and scared the heck out of me in the beginning. Now I'm more used to stories like that. A great success. Unfortunately, I'm a little more used to that now. And I will say, people regularly say to me, "Oh, you must have a bunch of nightmare stories." It's like, I don't have as many as you would think. I do have some, but not as many as you would think. A really great success story is actually similar to the one that you shared. I met this family business when there were two brothers who were really running it, but they had many siblings who were also owners. And over a long process, they bought their siblings and some of their nieces and nephews out. And then in the end, after all of that, one brother bought the other brother out. This was actually a holding company, a family business that owned several divisions. And they ended up splitting some of the divisions off. I mean, it was a years long, in some ways a nightmare story as well, with fighting over the valuation. And, I worked there when I was a teenager and I wasn't paid enough, and I'm owed back pay and all that kind of stuff. What it turned into, though, was a dad who had 3 kids. And I got to be in conversations with them about what do we want from the business and what kind of opportunities are we creating in our community and for ourselves as we go forward. And they have sold some of the businesses and they've started some, and it's a beautiful story. What they want is similar to your question earlier. They want to create a platform for members of their family to engage in entrepreneurial endeavors.
Yeah.
None of them are running any of the businesses. They've hired great people to run the businesses, and they go out and they start cool entrepreneurial stuff. And it's beautiful.
Yeah, that's wonderful to watch.
It's ideal. It's ideal. Yeah.
Yeah. So my 2 top stories, if you'll humor me.
I can't wait. Bring it on.
And the worst case scenario. And this is the one that inspired me to have hard conversations with my dad about succession. The guy was 18 years old. And now he's in his mid-30s. He's telling this story of what happened. His father was the founder and owner of a company, about 150 employees, and had a heart attack. And he says his business succession plan was standing in the hospital in the ICU, and his dad was no longer able to speak, puts his hand outside the covers. He said, "I had a cold, clammy handshake with my dad and no words, and I became the next CEO at 18.
What a nightmare. Oh my goodness.
Okay. On the other side, working with a business, about 20 years old, and they're rolling out EOS, implementing EOS. So they're getting clarity about where they want to go. In their projection for their 10-year future, they decided on 10 years, struggling to figure out where this is. So father, a son, and 2 non-family members on the leadership team. So we do the kind of revenue exercise, and I'm just going to pick odd numbers. I don't want to tell the company's story precisely, but it was something like, dad says 10 years from now, we'll be doing 15 million in revenue, which is a 50% increase. Somebody else says 20 million. Somebody else says 25. They get to the son and he says 300 million. Okay. This prompts one of the most animated and most fascinating conversations I've facilitated around 10-year target. And they start banting around, and the son finally says, "Well, I'm young. I want to blow this thing up. I don't want incremental. I want a 10x. And dad looks at him and says, why do you want a 10x? He said, well, significance. But he said, let's be honest, I also have some expensive hobbies I need to fund somehow.
Wow.
And at the end of that conversation, they agreed on say $250 million. And dad said, okay, so I need to start succession planning because I'm not the person to be the CEO of a $250 million company. And within 6 months, he was working with a succession planner and plans to exit the business around 50, 60 million in revenue. But the team committed to 250 million.
I love that story so much.
And it's just getting clarity, getting on the same page. What do we want? And then also, I can be an owner in a $250 million company, but I don't have to run it.
Yes.
There are people who are qualified to run those companies better than I can. So let's find those people.
And
okay,
they would
those
love
stories are
to
there.
run the company.
Oh,
Love to
absolutely.
do it. Yes.
Absolutely. So again, that maybe that is a transition here to kind of wrapping up our time together. So if you're listening, you have questions, doesn't matter how big or how small your family business is, and you'd like to have Sarah's input into questions you have, please jot those in chat. And we're happy to entertain a few questions here as we go to wrap up our time together. Again, family business, it's a remarkable space. Remarkable space. So much opportunity created for legacy, for really healthy lifestyle, family flourishing. And when families flourish through business is one of those vehicles, communities benefit, entire towns and communities. I just yesterday on the way to the airport to pick up my wife, uh, I drove through a small town here in Virginia. And there's the biggest, most impressive building in this small town has a family name above the door. We're talking about a beautiful brick building. But then you go on down, the community center has that same family name on the window, above the door. I mean, their imprint is all across that town. And, the percentage of people in that town that work in that family business is significant. And that reach then is across the state of Virginia from a little tiny town in the Shenandoah Valley, Virginia.
There are stories like that all over the world. They're the most common kind of family business there is a family business. The family businesses employ more people than any other kind of family business
That's
in
right.
the world. They tend to be more loyal employers, and they give more generously to their communities than any other
That's
kind
right.
of person. I mean, the ripple effect of family business is massive around the globe and has been always.
Yeah. Okay, Rebecca, any questions you have or anybody else?
I haven't seen any questions come in so far, but I've got one, which actually we just had one come in. Yeah, so let me ask that. All right. This is from Richard Miller. My son asked me to be his partner. Great story. I am 105 or maybe 1,000% committed to his name being on the marquee sign. I don't need the recognition and it's his baby. We have baked this into our partnership agreement. The challenge is, wait, we have ... Oh, we're in suspense.
This is so
we're still
exciting.
waiting. Oh.
Okay, Richard, tell us what your challenge is.
Pins and needles.
Well,
I feel like we need some background music for this.
I do too, or a drum roll, or maybe a guessing game.
The Jeopardy music.
Oh, wow. Richard's the visionary.
He is neither visionary or integrator. Yeah.
So this is a business getting started by the son and the dad?
It's fairly early,
right? Yeah.
fairly early stages, yes.
Yep. Okay. So the question is about the name on the marquee. What are you really getting at with the name on the marquee there?
So that's a branding issue, I think. So it's like Quaker Oats.
Yeah.
Ford, the family name, and he's willing to say the family name is his son's name, not his.
It's his baby. You want to be behind the scenes, but you're the visionary. Okay.
So I'm going to comment. I know this situation just a bit.
Oh, okay, good.
So let me just
Okay.
comment and say, I think, Richard, one of the keys here is to distinguish these three circles clearly. Ownership, family, and business. You can be an owner, you can be the brand of a company and hire somebody else to be the visionary. If that's not your skill set, hire somebody else to be the integrator. And you have to just say, right now, you're probably that visionary and integrator, partly because you're the dad, but also partly because you have some of those traits. Okay, just don't confuse this in the long term as being essential to the brand. You're a visionary who has a role in the business. It just happens that you're also family and may have a bit of an ownership stake or may not. I forget where you are in that situation. So parse these three circles out, and you can just picture you have to wear a visionary hat for the business that is somebody else's brand, just as if you went working for Ford Motor Company or Quaker Oats. Even if you're first cousins of the Quaker who founded the Quaker Oats, or of Henry Ford Sr. or Bill Ford, parse those roles out and know what the questions are in each one of those three spaces and address those questions. And he can clearly be an owner and be an active in another role without ever being the visionary. He will need a visionary. He will need an integrator, somebody who beats the drum well, somebody who brings the ideas. And it may be you for now, but it can be somebody else in the future.
I would say that too with the branding is don't connect the branding to the people.
Correct.
To the last name. Okay, good. You do have an ownership stake. Okay. Yeah. The brand, the name, I would always say keep it away from the family for 1,000 reasons.
And they do.
One just being branding,
Yeah.
being that one. But it takes a lot of the emotional stuff out of that. It's, again, you're owning a piece of art. You're owning think about it, you're owning a piece of art. You're owning a collectible car. You're owning a herd of cattle. Try to keep that separated. Share. Also, I love that this is a beginning story here. Make sure you have ownership meetings. Having an ownership meeting is different than a level 10 or a quarterly or an annual. That's when you sit down eye to eye as owners talking about what you want from the business. I hope this is helpful. And how cool. Oh, what a joy to have your kid ask you to be a partner in the business. Oh, how fun.
Those 6 ownership questions that you raised.
Yes.
Take those to your ownership meeting. And I think I got this from you, Sarah. I'm not sure. But the family needs a leader, a CEO, chief emotional officer.
Yes.
The owners need a CEO, the chief equity officer. What do we want from our equity in the business? And the business itself needs a CEO, the chief executive officer. How are we going to work out this strategy? What's our strategy and our plan?
Yes.
And work with different questions in different seats. And then just keep that business away from Thanksgiving meals. That's the big challenge you've got right now. Have an ownership meeting and a business meeting. Okay, we need to wrap up with that. Thank you so much, Sarah. And just a reminder to all of you, you can find links to this for recording afterwards. Share it with your friends, people who in family business have challenges on YouTube, Shed Advisor. There's a phone number you can dial in and listen to just the audio, or you can always join us on our Facebook or our website, shedadvisor.com. And do slip over to Sarah's website as well, Sara B. Stern. That's SARA, middle initial B, STERN, sarabstern.com, and pick up that book. This will give you some questions to really get clarity in your business. Sarah, it was a joy. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much for being with us. And I suppose we'll see you in Orlando, if not before.
Yes, I look forward to seeing you there. Hopefully you'll get the goodie tray this time and not me.
Yeah, I probably won't qualify for any goodies at this point.
Until
I become an expert. Okay, then maybe I'll qualify again.
Amazing. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Sarah. And good day to all of you.